Welcome to Guns, Guns, Gear, and Guns with Gary Gunderson. I am Gary Gunderson, ATF Director Dettelbach, and one of his experts.
And Chris is here. He's one of our leading experts.
Appeared on CBS's Face the Nation in a blatant propaganda puff piece to push gun control and managed to highlight their ignorance and bias. Let's take a look at the segment.
This is a full auto assault weapon.
An assault weapon? Really?
What is an assault weapon? Could you define it for me?
I did not define the term, and I haven't gone through the process of defining that term. That would only be for the Congress if it chose to take that up to do. Both of them can shoot right through this 75-round clip. 75-round clip.
It's a semantics point, but when you are head of the ATF, we can criticize you for misusing terminology. That's a magazine, not a clip. Very basic stuff that is usually used to criticize newbies.
This one, which looks and operates just like it, this is a bump stock attached. These two things are the same.
They look right.
They operate the same. Both of them can shoot right through this 75-round clip.
That's simply not true. They function differently. Both may result in a high rate of fire, but they do not function the same way at all. One, you hold the trigger back and it will continue to fire as long as you hold it. The other fires once with each trigger pull, but you can use the bump stock to bump fire in place, which requires you to push forward on the rifle and let it slide back and forth while the trigger is pulled by your finger with each round fired. Hence the current debate on these being banned that just heard arguments at the Supreme Court level, which I have a video on. Also, the expert having trouble operating the bump stock is poetry.
Hundreds and hundreds of rounds.
400 to 500 rounds per minute is, I believe, what they're claiming for this particular firearm.
There is no reason you would use that for hunting.
Only morons believe the Second Amendment is about hunting.
I do not believe you would use this for hunting. So,
this is to shoot large numbers of people at once.
Or if you just want to have a good time and shoot some stuff, there are plenty of reasons to fire quickly that are not about shooting people. It's a right, and you don't get to be the fun police because you can't understand why I would want to do something that hurts no one else.
The smaller the weapon, the easier it is to hide. So Congress determined back in the 1930s that short-barreled rifles, which were both smaller than a certain length and were designed to be fired from the shoulders, that combination made it unusually dangerous.
In actuality, at the time, short rifles were not very prevalent. The SBR provision in the National Firearms Act was actually to close loopholes for a pending pistol ban that eventually failed. So we are left with legislation stopping loopholes for a law that was never passed. They were not especially dangerous outside of that pistol context.
I defy, one of them, everybody would agree is a short-barreled rifle because it's sold in one piece. The other one's the exact same thing, but it's sold in two pieces. So people are claiming, no, that's a pistol brace. The two weapons are designed to be fired from the shoulder identically.
They are usually sold together and were designed to be wrapped around the arm, hence the brace part of it. It's called a brace.
and then you have this, which is the GCA version of it, which you could walk into the store and purchase in that configuration.
Well, people are claiming that they could do that, right?
The ATF claimed you could do that. The ATF said braced pistols were okay, and then said that, yeah, they can't stop you from shouldering a braced pistol. It's not like it would become an NFA item if you use it in that way, which led to these being in the hands of millions of gun owners.
I mean, these look like this here. Looks like something you'd see in a war zone.
Why are you trying to kill my vibe, lady? It looks cool. It should not be illegal because you're scared.
See it right here. Restricted law enforcement government use only. This is a machine gun that soldiers and law enforcement officers.
Okay, this is funny because it shows how ignorant the ATF director is. Firearms defined as assault weapons manufactured during the assault weapon ban from 94 to 2004 all have that marking because at the time they were made for government and law enforcement use only. Now they are perfectly legal to own after that stupid law expired. There are also magazines that were marked the same way, again, now legal to own, at least if you are in a free state. This one is different because it is set up for full auto, but that marking is not proof that it's actually for government and law enforcement only anymore. Isn't that right, Director? Okay, I don't know what that means.
Privately made firearm, ghost gun.
It says Osh. I mean, this feels metal and heavy and significant. This doesn't feel like something that came off a 3D printer.
Well, that's because it has metal pieces on it. The frame is still plastic. And our expert in showing off Glocks struggles to disassemble and even reassemble the most common style of handgun currently in use.
The receiver.
Simply attach that on.
And to buy those parts, is there any serial number and tracing of
No, you don't have to.
pieces?
You don't. If you're selling firearms,
And to buy those parts, is there any serial number and tracing of
no, you don't have to.
pieces?
You don't. If you're selling firearms parts alone, right? Then it's not a frame or receiver,
Parts are not regulated.
and
by
they're not
ATF.
regulated under the law. We're not allowed to do that.
You
right?
would like to do that?
That's up to Congress to determine. But I mean, what we
That look you get when your girl knows you want to violate fundamental rights and regulate every part of a firearm.
So this frame has been 3D printed.
Yeah, it feels plastic.
Yeah?
There are some versions of firearms that you can 3D print. We do have an example here of a 3D printed revolver.
That looks like a staple gun.
I mean, I can see if she said Nerf gun, but staple gun? She doesn't even know what a staple gun looks like.
one of the disturbing parts of the answer is not so much how somebody has it made, but where they have it made. And they unfortunately, most of the weapons that go to the cartels are made in the United States.
Oh, really? You really want to go there? You want to bring up how firearms made in the U.S. worked their ways into the hands of cartels? How about when it happened at the behest of the ATF, which resulted in the death of at least one American?
So pistols are 21 years old to acquire, but these larger, more desirable weapons, these 18 years old and your normal background check and state requirements, and then you could walk out the door with these.
You know, and
That seems incredible.
You know, I agree. It does seem incredible that an 18-year-old who is able to vote, able to serve his country in the military, is legally an adult, has to wait until they are 21 to purchase a pistol.
It does not make sense.
you know, if somebody comes into your store in a border state and plunks down $12,000 cash money for one of these things, so that there's no credit card trail, you know, I mean, my word, we hope that people will help us as Americans and continue to help us and not make that sale and protect our safety.
If you own a gun store selling the firearm legally, which right now involves performing a background check, why would you care? If someone wants to purchase a 50 cal in cash, more power to them. Credit card companies have been actively trying to curb gun rights and create their own de facto registry by tracking purchases of firearms via credit cards. I do not pay with a credit card when given the option.
Are these widely sold by firearms dealers? Because who else is the customer?
I don't care.
Again, if I don't do anything illegal with it, why do you care? I don't need to justify why I want to exercise my rights the way I want to.
And we depend on firearms dealers, many of whom are our first line of defense, who will pick up the phone and help us.
Maybe if you stopped the zero tolerance policy that shuts down gun stores for small paperwork errors, people would be friendlier to the ATF. The director also participated in an interview segment as well.
Every time somebody suggests some cause or some cure, the first thing that somebody else says is, well, that's not the problem. That won't solve the problem, right? Well, I think we're looking at this through the wrong lens. The test isn't whether any one thing, to answer your question, is going to solve the problem or is the only driver, right? The test for whether we do something should be two to me. Number one, is it legal? Number two, will it help save lives?
Maybe that's how it could work, but in reality,
My lord, is that legal?
I will make it legal.
also the objection to many of these measures is that they do curb rights. And yes, you should not give up your rights easily, as it is much more difficult to claw them back than defend them now. Do you really think you'll get the rights back when the problem is not solved after you give them up? No, because it's not really about saving people.
We are using our rulemaking authority to make sure that we're applying the laws that Congress has already passed.
Problem is, this rule-making authority often extends beyond the actual laws that have been passed by Congress to enforce laws that could not be passed in Congress.
We live in the space where we have to objectively look at the laws that Congress has passed.
Yeah.
It's amazing that these objective looks can suddenly change based on directives from the Oval Office. That is definitively not objective.
So it was after that massacre in Las Vegas that this became illegal.
It was after that massacre in Las Vegas that Attorney General of the United States in the last administration asked ATF to review its position on whether this was classified as an NFA weapon.
Yeah, thank you for making my point. Suddenly, something that the ATF had examined and deemed to be legal was illegal via executive action once it was politically expedient to do so.
Why weren't bump stocks addressed at all in this 2022 law that President Biden signed, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act?
This is because they use the rule-making authority in place of legislation and have been protected by this power for years. There may have been a time where Congress could have passed a law altering the definition of a machine gun to include bump stock devices, but they abdicated that authority to the bureaucratic organization instead.
You know, as the head of ATF, I think it's fair to say that for the agency that is the only federal law enforcement agency that solely deals with violent crime.
Are you joking? The ATF put a guy in jail for advertising an auto key card, a credit card sized piece of metal with a very slight etching on it that the ATF said could theoretically be turned into a machine gun. It's not cut so you can just pop it out. It is essentially a drawing, and they sent a man to jail, not even for manufacturing it, but for advertising it. Solely violent crimes? Is a guy having a rifle with a barrel too short inherently violent? Let alone the alcohol and tobacco positions of your agency? What are you even talking about?
This little piece of plastic is a machine gun.
The little green nub, is that illegal?
Yes.
I mean, at least he's embracing it, holding a small piece of plastic or little green nub, and declaring this is a machine gun is so absurd on its face. But that's the law right now. That piece of plastic can land you in prison.
Justice Gorsuch discussed that since bump stocks were legal before 2018 and that regulation, as many as 500,000 people could be convicted of felonies, face jail time, or lose the right to vote. Is that fear misplaced?
Yes. There's not any notion that people who possess these items prior to the rule being issued could or would be prosecuted.
Here, I'm not certain if they are intentionally missing the point or brain dead. Part of the point Justice Gorsuch made is that with bump stocks, by extension arm braces or other items suddenly prohibited by a rule, millions of these were sold to millions of Americans with the understanding that it was legal and there was ATF approval. However, via the rule-making authority, the ATF declared these to be NFA items, with the bump stocks being actual machine guns that needed destroyed, and every firearm with a brace an illegal SBR without any action from Congress after being on the market for years. He was not only talking about those who purchased these items when they were legal, but also those continuing to possess them. Not because the law changed, but because the way the ATF interprets the law changed, and that millions of these people are casual gun owners who do not follow the ins and outs of law.
The problem here we acknowledge is ATF used to say something different about these, but we think that's taken care of by the rulemaking and the doctrine of entrapment by itself.
Because people will sit down and read the Federal Register.
No, I think because people who have these devices...
That's what they do in their evening for fun. Gun owners across the country crack it open next to the fire and the dog.
So this fear is very valid, because if the ATF gets their way on these rules, they will prosecute you, which will make you a felon and remove your right to vote. But what can we do to avoid these things?
We try to make that determination based upon each individual situation, the facts and circumstances. If somebody wants to know whether a certain thing qualifies, they can write us a letter. We will write them back a letter examining. They send us the item, we examine it.
Wow, that's helpful. You mean like how people wrote letters about bump stocks and they were approved by the ATF before retroactively being declared to always be illegal? Or how about arm braces and how those were approved before they retroactively declared they were always illegal NFA short-barreled rifles? Or the fact the Solicitor General just argued in front of the Supreme Court.
But the ATF writes a classification letter, which is something relatively informal, just goes to the manufacturer, doesn't contain a lot of legal reasoning.
It's about the fact that when Congress passed that law back in the 30s and then
to outlaw machine guns.
Right, to outlaw machine guns, right?
That's not what happened. In the 30s, they at least knew they did not have the authority to outlaw machine guns because of the Second Amendment. What they did, which should also have been unconstitutional, was declare that though they could not outlaw them, they could add a monetarily restrictive tax and extra bureaucratic paperwork to discourage the purchase of machine guns and limit the purchase to those who could afford it, because the wealthy never commit crimes. The reason it is more affordable today is because they did not tie the taxed amount, $200, to inflation or to scale with anything over time. That was an extremely prohibitive amount of money at the time, but it was still perfectly legal to sell machine guns to civilians and for civilians to purchase new machine guns until 1986.
You know, I think the temperature on this issue is way, way, way too high. Those people were able to sit in that room with all that grief and have a discussion. Tell me their feelings, differing feelings about how we should approach this problem. And they all had ideas. If those people in that grief can disagree with each other but still sit and have a conversation in a civilized way, what is the excuse for the other 350 million of us not to be able to do that?
The problem is not that we can't have a conversation, it's that people on the other side of the aisle want to completely eradicate gun rights. And before you say that's extreme, the Heller Supreme Court case dissent, which was a 5-4 decision, said that you did not have a right to personally own firearms in your home. So it is not hyperbole to say that. The problem as you see it is things are not getting done. However, that's not really true. More states than ever allow constitutional carry. More courts are pushing back against the Bruin response bills that are trying to delay giving the Second Amendment rights to the poor citizens of states in tyranny like California. Things are getting done, it's just not at a national level and not exactly the things you are wanting to push. But we do need to push more. Abolishing the NFA would be a good start, for one. But what do you think of the ATF propaganda piece Did they do them a little dirty by not editing out the awkward moments? What was your favorite part? Let me know in the comments below, and if you've made it to the end of the video, I have a whole playlist of this type of video breaking down politicians and bureaucrats talking about firearms. If you enjoy it, also consider supporting me on Patreon, liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with others. Thanks for watching.